thank you very much for inviting me here.
Certainly.
I believe my great-grandfather came here, my grandmother came here, my father came here. So it's an honor for me, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Okay. Let me just remind everyone that I'm happy to take your questions, but please write them on the cards provided and hand them before. Shouted questions will not be picked up by our microphones, and if you disturb this proceeding, we will be escorted out. So just want to make that clear. Okay, so since Mr. Modi has come to power, India's economy has improved, according to independent economic assessments. What's your take on the current government's economic policies? Have they improved the country's position?
I mean, what we see on the ground is massive unemployment and dramatic increase in prices. And this is one of the reasons we won the Karnataka election, was that there was a feeling in India that there is a set of people who have a huge amount of wealth, and then there's a large mass of Indian people who are poor and struggling. Huge income disparities and unemployment. I think it's a 40-year high for unemployment. So to say that the economy is doing well, I don't quite agree with it.
And are there particular policies that are a cause for concern or that should be changed?
I think the central difference between how we see it and how the BJP sees it is we believe in decentralization of power. We believe in supporting the small and medium industries, and we believe that they are the engine of growth in India. And they tend to concentrate power and wealth in few limited people. So that's, I would say, broadly, that's the difference in the economic perspective.
Okay. If your party were to return to power, what changes would it seek to implement to ensure the rights of minorities in India?
I mean, India has a very robust system already in place. That system has been weakened, right? But it's not that system doesn't exist. If the conversation, the democratic conversation is allowed to be fostered, then these issues will settle themselves.
So the rule of law is in place. It just perhaps isn't followed.
It's you have to have an independent set of institutions that are not pressurized and controlled, and that's been the norm in India. This is an aberration. What is taking place in India. So, from our perspective, the foundations of democracy in India are very strong. And the protections exist, but they're being sort of disturbed.
And you see that if Congress came to power, they could quickly be restored.
Quickly, I don't know, but the Congress party is the institution that conceptualized them in the first place, right? So we don't view them as our institutions. We view them as institutions of the state, and so we ensured that there was independence and neutrality in these institutions. And it's not difficult to do if that's what you're trying to do.
Let me ask you about, again, welcome to the Press Club, and let me ask you about press freedom, very important issue for us all. I should, full disclosure, my colleague, Vivek Raghuvanshi, was arrested several weeks ago and charged with, and accused of espionage. He's an Indian citizen. And what does that, he's been working for my company for more than 30 years and as a journalist. And I wanted to ask you what that says about the state of press freedom in India when someone, can be just accused of, even after, if someone with such a reputation can be accused in such a cavalier manner.
No, I think the fact that there is a weakening of press freedoms, this is not hidden. I mean, everybody knows it. It's apparent in India. The rest of the world can see it. And I think press freedom is very, very critical for a democracy. I mean, one should be open to criticism, and one should listen to criticism. I mean, that's the feedback loop that builds democracies. And definitely, there is a weakening of press freedom. I mean, and it's not just press freedom. It's on multiple axes. On multiple axes, there is a clampdown on the institutional framework that allowed India to talk, that allowed the Indian people to negotiate. I view India as a negotiation between its people, between different languages, different cultures, different histories. And the architecture that Mahatma Gandhi set up was to allow that negotiation to be carried out fairly and freely. And that structure that allows the negotiation between India's people is coming under pressure. I mean, this is a question you should ask Mr. Modi. So, more apt.
Okay.
I don't know how you'll get there.
As soon as we get him here.
I don't know how you'll get there, but yeah, I think we better question directed at him.
Okay. What are your concerns with regard to the use of the citizenship law to expel Muslim Indians who have lived in India for generations? How would you handle things differently?
I think all Indian people, right, have a right to expression. All Indian people have a right to religious freedom. All Indian communities should feel free to express themselves. So I don't differentiate between any community, any caste. I think India, as I mentioned just now, is a conversation, and the freer and more open that conversation, the more powerful India becomes.
Okay. You have said that Modi's BJP engages in the politics of hatred and violence. Can you explain what you mean by this?
I mean, it's explained in the sentence, right? They sort of generate a certain amount of hatred in society. They polarize society, and they're not inclusive. They don't embrace everybody, and they divide society. That's what this. Yeah, and that's damaging in my view to India, because India has always had a tradition of conversation, of openness. All our great leaders, spiritual, political, Mahatma Gandhi, Buddha, all of them promoted harmony, promoted peace, promoted conversation. So it's in our culture, it's in our history to sort of bring people together and have these dialogues. So that's I think it's a difference in ideology between us and the BJP. We feel India should be allowed to express itself, and we feel that political leaders should be comfortable in sort of being questioned and should learn from that questioning. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's just a difference in viewpoint.
For such a divisive figure, Modi maintains very high levels, in fact, worldwide high levels of popularity. Why do you think that's the case? Why do so many Indians support the Modi government?
I mean, there is a definite capture of the institutions of the country. There's a definite capture of the press in the country. I'm not convinced that I don't believe everything I hear. I walked across India, walked from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, and talked directly to millions of Indian people, and they didn't seem very happy to me. And they were very clear that there were serious issues with regards to unemployment. There was massive price rise. So there was an angst in the people. And look at the Karnataka election and wait and watch the next 3 or 4 state elections. that I think is a better indicator of what's going to happen.
You're here in Washington. Washington has a cozying up, if you will, to the Modi government. Do you feel like this is a mistake? Do you feel like this is not the U.S. should pursue?
Who am I to advise?
Policies?
Who am I to advise Washington on what they want to do? You know? I mean, it's their choice. They have to decide about these things. It's pretty clear from our perspective where we've got to go. There are certain values that we protect, and we're very serious about protecting those values. As I said, the conversation between the people of India, the idea that all Indians should have space, equal expression. These are things that for us are non-negotiable, and we fight for them and we pay the price.
What is your, I have a comment from the audience here. What is your reaction to Prime Minister Modi's statement that not an inch of land has been lost to the border with China? And can you talk about India's relationship with China and how it's changing?
I mean, the fact of the matter is China is occupying our territory. It's an accepted fact. I think 1,500 square kilometers, land the size of Delhi is occupied by them, and I think, absolutely unacceptable. Prime Minister seems to believe otherwise. I don't know. I mean, maybe he knows something we don't know.
I'm going to ask about Kashmir. India is positioning Kashmir as a tourist destination, while certain populations are persecuted. Do you see this as the path to prosperity for that region?
No, I think everybody in India has a democratic right. Every single person in India should be allowed to be part of the conversation. I think there are things that can be improved in Jammu and Kashmir with regards to that conversation, and we are committed to improving the conversation, the democratic conversation in Jammu and Kashmir.
It says you talked about secularism and democracy while opposing the Hindu party Bjp. However, Congress in Kerala has been in alliance with the Muslim party, Muslim League in Kerala, the state from which you were MP for more than, the state you are the MP for more than 70 years.
Muslim League is a completely secular party.
Right.
There's nothing non-secular about the Muslim League.
Questions are a little disjointed. Sorry about that.
I think the person hasn't studied the Muslim League.
Back to politics. How united is the opposition in India, and why isn't Congress supporting Kejriwal on the ordinance issue?
No, that's an internal discussion we are having. The opposition is pretty well united, and I think it's getting more and more united. We are having conversations with all the opposition, and I think quite a lot of good work is happening there.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a complicated discussion because there are spaces where we are competing also with the opposition. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit of give and take is required, but I'm confident that will happen.
Okay. So given the electoral strength of the BJP, would Congress now be willing to consider being part of a coalition government that it does not lead?
Well, I mean, these are questions that need to be asked to the Congress president because he's the decision maker. I think the Congress party will do very well in the next election. I think it'll surprise people because I think there is a hidden undercurrent building, and I think will surprise people. And I'm not entirely convinced about this idea that Mr. Narendra Modi is going to win the 24 elections. I think it's not as simple as people make out. If you just do the math, a united opposition will defeat the BJP on its own, without any, electoral math.
What can the international community, what role is there for the international community to prevent a slide towards authoritarianism?
I mean, it's our job, right? It's our business, and it's our work to fight the battle for democracy in India. And it's something that we understand, we accept, and we do. But the thing to remember is that Indian democracy is a global public good, because India is large enough that a collapse in democracy in India will have an impact on the world. So that's for you to think about, how much you value Indian democracy. But for us, it's an internal matter, and it's a fight that we are committed to, and we're going to win.
President Biden will host Prime Minister Modi for an official state visit later this month. The White House said in a statement the visit will strengthen both countries' shared commitment to a free, open, prosperous, and secure Indo-Pacific, and deepen strategic partnerships in defense, clean energy, and space. What impact do you see the visit having?
I mean, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens in the visit. I think let the Prime Minister come here and let the visit take place, and then let's see. I don't want to sort of prejudge this. Yeah, but I do think the relationship between India and the United States is very, very important. I think it's also important that we broad-base the relationship. It's important to have a defense relationship, but I think we need to also consider other areas, and we need to have a vision for other spaces other than defense.
Do you see India as a center between Russia and China and U.S. interests? Do you see it benefiting from the interplay of these countries, or do you see it taking almost a leadership role in the Indo-Pacific in terms of economic issues? Or
look, India has to do what's in its self-interest, right? And that's what will guide us. But as a people, we are committed to a democratic vision. So I myself am not entirely convinced about the sort of autocratic vision that is being promoted. And I think that it's very important that democracy is protected on the planet, right? So India has a role there. India, of course, has its view on things, and I think that view should be put on the table. But I don't think one should think about these things as, oh, you're the center of things. I think that would be arrogant. We understand the strengths that we bring to the table, right? Democratic values, data. These are some of the things that technology, a highly educated, technically educated population, these are our strengths. And I think we have to chart our course based on these strengths.
This is a question from the audience. India started as a secular state, but is currently leaning toward a Hindu state. Is that a threat to democracy? Is India losing its original ideology from your perspective?
I think there's a fight on in India. There are two visions of India. There is the vision that the Bjp has. It's a centralizing vision. It's a polarizing vision. And then there's another vision, equally strong. In fact, if you ask me, much stronger, but not expressing itself that effectively right now, which is a decentralized view, an embracing vision, a sensitive, compassionate vision. And I'm absolutely convinced that this is a transitional phase, and the true nature of India, the true democratic nature of India, compassionate nature of India will triumph. I have no doubt in my mind. And by the way, we've gone through this phase before. So it's not that it's a new thing. The Congress party faced this exact same thing in the 30s, and we decimated it. And we will do the same again. People are impatient, People are like, very impatient. BJP has been in power for 10 years. Well, okay, we were in power for 10 years before that. Why did nobody say, in UPA too, when we had been in power for 8 years, why did nobody say, oh my God, the BJP is going to evaporate? After all, the same, we were in power for 10 years. So there is a tendency for the media to sort of exaggerate these things. There are reasons for it also. But we are committed to the democratization of India. And we are committed especially to the emancipation of the poor people of India, the lower castes, backward castes, these communities.
I think I heard you say you described the media in India as somewhat captured by the powers that be.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could remove the word somewhat.
So if your party comes to power, what steps would be taken to free up that press and make it less?
I mean,
co-opted?
You don't really need to do much. You need to just stop interfering and stop pressurizing. And if you look at the UPA period, we didn't interfere, we didn't pressurize, and it worked perfectly fine. So if the leadership of the country decides that a free press is valuable, then it will fall into place.
Got it. Question for